We created some objects, we added them to the stage. I'm just gonna delete them quickly and add a new object onto the stage. Not that I really had to, just for fun. Okay, click on V to make sure that I'm back in my arrow mode. Now the next thing I want to do is talk about the properties panel. And as we said before, there's a lot of ways to get to your properties panel. Most likely, if you can't find it on your stage, then you'd always just go to your window, search for properties, and open it up. But I know where my properties is because I set it up to be minimized here on the side. So I'm just going to click on it, and clicking on my properties will reveal to me my properties. And it's basically what the properties are. And the most easy way to explain it is that the property panel is kind of a dynamic panel, and that's the reason why I really needed to have something on the stage. And what does that mean? The properties panel, and let me just, for this example, I'm just gonna set everything's good here. Let me just save my workspace pen again, and I'm gonna override myself because I want to make sure that we get back to be exactly this way. Because I'm going to change my panel, and I'm just going to grab properties and throw it outside of that because I don't want it to toggle on and off every second right now, even though usually I do. So now I have our properties panel out. Let's see what happens when you select something that's on the stage. As soon as I click on something on the stage, you'll see that you'll see that it's selected. It will have like this mesh on it showing you that it's selected. And now that it's selected, our properties panel changed. And it's true with anything in Flash. So if I had other visual items on the stage, you'll see that every time I have a visual item on the stage, and again, I'm going to click on V, if I select it, you'll see that we have a shape, and it gives us details about that shape, which we could then modify if we wanted to and change around. We could go to our object, we could change its color. Really, this is kind of an overview that says, okay, what is my properties? My properties gives me information about my currently selected element, whatever that element is. If I select nothing, in other words, I'm selecting the stage. When I select the stage, then Flash will generate the properties panel from a thing that's called, well, it's kind of a mixture between our published settings and our document settings. And before we dig into them, really, let me just highlight our most important thing that is our focus, which is our document class, which is right here. And that's exactly what we're going to work with to actually configure our application to work with an external class. But until we get to that point where we reach that point where we kind of we're in the decision path of loading an external asset and working with an external asset, let's just see an overview of some of the properties that are related globally to our application. And as we said previously when we were talking about the timeline, is that Flash re-renders the application, the visual things in the application, in a frame rate, in a certain frame rate. And currently we are set to 24 frames a second, which we could change. And we could change them in our frame rate as well. Now, it doesn't really matter what you see in your properties, because really depending on your Flash version, you're going to see different things. But basically, when you have nothing selected, you're in your editing mode to enabling you to editing things that are related to your publishing and things that are related to properties that are global to your application. And if you can't get to them through your properties, we're going to see how to get to them in a second. So I'm not going to make any edits here. And we're going to see how we could edit directly from our properties panel and how do we edit from our publish settings as well. So in our publish settings, we could see that we're running Flash 10, but we could have ran Flash 9 as well. We're running in ActionScript 3, which is exactly the version of Flash we want to run. And we can see that we can't really tinker that from our publish settings. It's just giving us that information. And here we would put our class path. Now, in our properties panel, we said we could see our frame rates, which we could change manually right here, or go into our properties panel, overlay, you probably could call it. We could change the size of our application, which we can't manually do it right here, but we could go into our properties overlay as well. Or we could change our background color if we wanted to and change the background color. Now, an interesting new addition, I guess, where I haven't seen it before, is the Swift history, which I don't believe existed in previous versions. It's just here to show you that, Flash evolves and changes, and it really isn't it isn't critical for our mission, but it's really great to know the properties panel and seeing all these different things that are related to items, and it's the best way to explore and find things inside of our properties. Now, before we wrap our discussion about properties, let's touch back into our properties, which is half or a very big portion of our properties. How do we edit our properties? We could click obviously on the edit button right here to get into our document properties. But if we don't know how to get here, or we couldn't find it because we're working in a different version of Flash, again, we could always go through our menus. And our menu this time around would be in Modify Document, which Modify Document would open up our document settings. So we could either go through Modify Document, or we could just click on our Edit button, and that would enable us to change the dimensions of our application. So for, let's say, we would want to change it to be 100, and the height we would want to remain the same. Then if we click OK, we're going to see that our application size has now changed. So one thing is, if we look at our application, we don't really see our application. Oh, what am I doing here? If we can't really see our bounding anymore. Why is that? Because why is that? If I delete, where are we? The reason is because if I just close the properties for a second, let's search for it. Where is our? Well, it's kind of disappeared, didn't it? Let me try here. Maybe let's get to a really, really small view. It's 25%. And I still can't see it. So let's see what's going on here. Let's go into our library. Let's go back into our properties. This is great because I am kind of lost right now. And we'll see our stage. Here we go. Our stage background color is now the same as the color of our non-stage. So we can't even see our stage. So let's set it back to being white so we could actually see it. Excellent. So now we could see that we actually did grow smaller. So let me just go back to our 100% view and put our content again in our view. Very good. Just a bit more, a little bit less. Okay. Perfect. So let's go back into our edit. And in our edit, we probably want to go back to 550. Now, I would recommend never really change your ruler unit. Well, we're working in an application, and it's going to be served on an application. And applications don't really work on any other measurement besides pixels. It's here really just for print, I think. Well, to be honest, I've never changed it, and I would love to hear why would anyone change it. And you can see also that right now we're set to 550 pixels, but we could have set it to not work with pixels. But why would we work with anything but pixels when we're working inside of a program? Pixels, by the way, are basically, their size really depends on the browser. Well, it really depends on the resolution you're in, and it really depends on the computer you're in. And that's a great way to work, because when you're working in an application, there's no such thing as an application that's 10 inches or an application that's 5 inches, because it really just depends on your monitor, how big it is, what your resolution is, and so on. So it's really not relevant. And in the world of programming, where your resolution is a certain amount of pixels, it makes it much easier to work, because then you're working in the same type of system, which is pixels, which is basically all the world of web and applications is really is just a duplication of the word really. It works with pixels. So that's all I have to say right now about pixels. And when we go and working on deeper into working with visual items, obviously we'll revisit this concept, but let's just keep it and working with pixels. We could change our frame rate, but for our sake, our samples, it really doesn't matter. We wouldn't want to change it because 24 is good for us. And we could change our background, which you don't really need to, but we could if we wanted to. And we could set our default to be whatever changes we make. So we could just set it and make our default and change our default to be whatever we want it to be. So if we wanted our background to be a different color, we could set that to be the default. But we're good with the default settings that Flash has.